Mr. Peterson has been waiting 20 years to find some of these police reports and audio recordings and video recordings that should have been provided.
New developments in the Scott Peterson case that could be tipping the scales in his bid for a new trial, and not the way he was hoping.
Mr. Peterson, could I have you please just raise your hand if you can both still see and hear the proceedings? Okay, and Mr. Peterson has raised his hand. No, we would either have him on mute because of the background noise he's still able to hear. All counsel who are identified for both the people and for Mr. Peterson are present.
A little tough to hear there. Judge Hill, though, in San Mateo County. Scott Peterson was appearing via Zoom yesterday in a hearing, and at the end of the day, the judge said no to a request from the LA Innocence Project representing Scott Peterson to test. They wanted 14 items to test, including a swab from the van that they believed that could have Laci Peterson's DNA on it. At the end of the day, the judge said no to all of the items except for one, and that is a piece of duct tape that was recovered from Laci Peterson's pants during her autopsy. That will get tested. There was an initial test back in 2003. It came back as a positive for, they had DNA, but they couldn't at the time zero in on it. It was too small of a sample. The testing technology of today will be able to help them maybe zero in on that. And who knows, at the end of the day, it could be Scott Peterson's DNA on there or someone else. We'll see. But the long and the short of this is this was a massive blow to Scott Peterson and his bid for a new trial. Let's talk about it. Bring in our guest still with us, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Michael J. Brown, and in studio, criminal defense attorney Eric Johnson II. Eric, to you first on this. The LA Innocence Project, they say, listen, we looked at this case, we think that there's a there, we want to test all these items, and one of the most important ones from their filing was this burned out orange van. It was found about a mile away, and at the time there was a mattress with a blood stain in it. They wanted access to the preserved evidence, and the judge at the end of the day said no yesterday because it had been tested in 2019, and the testing was basically, it came back, if there was DNA, it was a male's DNA. So your thoughts on the judge's rule? I mean, someone from the outside might say, well, why just let them test it? You know, if you think you got your guy. Why would the judge say no?
Well, one of the reasons and the roles of a judge is to maintain order in the courtroom itself. If the judge felt that this would be duplicative of something that happened before and would not necessarily advance the case or provide the information to assist Mr. Peterson's defense, then the judge would be well within his authority to be like, no, we're not going to waste the court's time and test this information.
And if, yeah, there has to be precedent, Michael J. Brown, in that if every defendant willy-nilly from saying, I want to retest everything from my trial, it would overload the system. This is a high-profile case, though, and what are your thoughts in terms of the judge's ruling and the state's argument, which was valid? They said, listen, this was tested. This was tested as late as 2019. So the judge agreed.
Yeah, Ted, you need finality. That's what trials are about. You have your trial. It's finality for the prosecution, for the witnesses, for the victims' families, for the defendant. And you have the appellate process, and they went through it, and it's final. It's done. Having said that, though, obviously when there's the possibility that this guy could be innocent and there is some type of new evidence that's come forward, you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but you have to make a showing. So I know that you're looking at it as, well, they were denied on the 14 items, but it's significant in that one piece. This tape on the victim's pant is going to be tested. That's significant. It's new testing, much more modern technology than 20 years ago, and you never know what that can reveal. And you take that as a foundation if it's beneficial for the defense, and then go forward with more testing on more items.
Good point. So it isn't over necessarily. That could be a little window for them. You have this duct tape that was on Laci's body, and if, let's say, it comes up with some random person
Correct.
That starts a whole nother chain, does it not, for the defense to explore and find that person and see if there's any connection.
Well, then you have to take the DNA from that person that was identified, and then they would want to compare that to the other items that were received in this case to see if that person matches up on some of those other items as well. It would open up basically a big thing for the defense if somebody was able to be identified, that they would have the ability to open it up and see if there's somebody else that could possibly be identified as well outside of their client.
The LA Innocence Project, which is different than the National Innocence Project, the Barry Scheck started organization, they've taken this case, Michael, they looked at all of it. It took them about 6 months to pull the trigger and announce publicly that, yeah, we're going to dive in head first and try to exonerate this person who we think was wrongly convicted. How important for Peterson, because he, to your point, has already exhausted his appeals and he's off death row, so he doesn't get the free legal help that a death row inmate gets by state law. How big a deal is this for Scott Peterson to have an organization like this? You say what you will about the organization, these are competent attorneys, on his side.
Oh, it's a big deal, Ted, because you have folks who are so experienced in these types of cases and the scientific evidence, and they'll have experts at their beck and call. They'll have many attorneys who have gone through this and know exactly the points they have to hit on. Again, I understand that they did not win their entire motion, but I really think it could be significant if it reveals some positive evidence for them, and that's we'll have to wait and see. And it could show Scott Peterson and game over at that point.
Oh, yeah, if it's his DNA on the tape, it's over. Final word, Eric. Is this still a long shot, is it not, for Scott Peterson to get a new trial?
As was just stated by my esteemed colleague, what happens is if something else comes up that exonerates him or introduces the identity of somebody else, that's great for him. If it comes back as his DNA or anything that can be attributed to him, as he stated, is game over.
Game over indeed. We will continue to monitor that. There's another hearing July 15th on a post-trial discovery motion. The LA Innocence Project asking for more information. This is not going away just because of the ruling. Michael J. Brown, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day as we round out this week. Eric Johnson, great to see you. Thanks for coming in.